Today we're going to go through the steps in replacing the fuel pump on this 2000 Dodge Ram 1500. We want to disconnect the negative battery cable before we begin the repair. We will also bleed the pressure off the system using the pressure relief valve on our pressure gauge. In order to do a proper fuel pump replacement, we need to clean the inside of the tank, and that will require the removal of the tank. Before we start lowering the tank, we'll need to disconnect the fuel filler hose and the vent hose. You may have to work the fuel filler hose off the pipe as you lower the tank. There are two straps that we will have to remove in order to lower the tank. Always make sure that your tank is safely supported. You will want to lower the tank slowly in order to avoid damaging any fuel lines or electrical connections. The fuel lines are a pinch type retainer. You will need to pinch the retainer to pull the line off. Disconnect your electrical connection. Keep in mind to release the safety retainer by sliding it to the right. With the fuel lines disconnected, we can remove the tank from the vehicle. Be sure and clean the top of the tank in order to keep any contaminants from getting in the tank as we remove the old fuel pump module. First, we'll need to remove the fuel line retainer clips. We will reuse these on the new module. We'll also remove the emissions vent hose. Depending upon the tank size, you may not have an emissions vent fitting on the module. In order to remove the locking ring, you'll be required to use a spanner wrench. These are attainable at any local parts store. Be sure and adjust the spanner wrench in order for it to fit the locking ring properly. When removing the fuel pump module, remember at the bottom of the module is a reservoir. Be sure and capture this fuel that would be in the reservoir in a safe container. At this point, we need to drain the remaining fuel into a safe container and then clean the inside of the tank. We want to be sure that the tank is as clean as possible to allow a clean environment for the fuel pump. Now that we've thoroughly cleaned the inside of the tank, we're ready to install the new Airtex fuel pump. Install the seal onto the fuel pump module. Slide the module into location. Once we get the unit in this position, we'll work the tank seal into location. Once we have the fuel pump module into the tank, we'll install our locking ring. Note, on the top of the Airtex module assembly is an arrow. When installing the pump into the tank, this arrow will be pointing between these two hash marks on top of the tank. Now we can hook up the emissions hose. For ease of installation, we'll install our fuel line retainer clips into the end of the fuel line fittings. Always be sure and inspect the fuel line fittings for any possible damage. As you're installing the tank back into the vehicle, be sure and start the fuel filler hose and the vent hose over the top of the frame. With the tank raised into this position, we can install our electrical connection and our fuel line fittings. With the fuel line and electrical connections made, we can now finish installing the tank into the vehicle. Reattach the fuel line filler hose and vent hose. With the repair complete, install the negative battery cable. Cycle the key 2 to 3 times in order to charge the system. And to start the vehicle and monitor the fuel pressure, making sure it's within vehicle specifications. To remove the gauge, we'll shut the engine off and bleed the pressure from the system using the pressure relief on the gauge, making sure to capture any fuel in a safe container.